Every story holds a spark of the human spirit. It's time to really let that light shine. This is Conjuring the Human Spirit, hosted by Shawn McGuire Meeks, a space for honest conversations, deep connection, and the shared journey of being fully alive. This season, Shawn also welcomes guests who open up about their own transformations and experiences, reminding us all what it means to heal, grow, and thrive, one story at a time. You're invited. Let's begin.
They say we don't choose our family, but sometimes the Spirit leads us to people who are meant to carry us home. 18 years ago, I met a man who would eventually become my dad. Not by blood, but by a choice rooted in love and respect that defies tradition, religion, and expectation. Today, we're sitting down with my dad, Jack Meeks, to talk about how a faith-filled heart expands rather than closes. In this episode, we're tracing the ripples of love. We're going from the influence of a mother's heart to a First Baptist upbringing, all the way to a man's willingness to embrace a gay man as a son, and now an adopted trans grandson named Max. This is a story about what happens when the human spirit chooses love. I'm Shawn McGuire Meeks, and this is a very special conversation with my dad. Well, Dad, welcome to Conjuring the Human Spirit. I'm so excited to have you here to have a conversation about our relationship, and a relationship about your mom, and to tell everyone what you've meant to me and maybe what I've meant to you.
Well, you didn't tell me you were going to bring me here, put me under the hot lights 18 years ago when I said I'd be your dad, but here we are. You've done a great job with this whole property out here and the barn now, so you're one of these few people I've ever met who can actually envision something and then execute it effectively. So hats off to you, son.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for your love and support. And we're going to talk about that love and support today. You came all the way from Florida to be here, and I really do appreciate that. Tell me, you're a Florida boy, right?
Yeah, I've always lived in Northeast Florida, Jacksonville now, from right out of college over 50 years ago. And then I grew up in Lake City, which is a little town, not quite so little anymore, but still about 60 miles west of Jacksonville.
And tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You were raised in the church, or tell me a little about what it was like to live in Lake City, Florida, the big town.
Oh, gosh. At the time, that's all I really knew. And so I played football. That was a big deal in Lake City. I think it still is, particularly maybe even more so in those years. And I never had really gotten to travel any until I got out of college and had some more money to actually go places and see some different things. So that was really what I knew. It looks a little perhaps constrained now in some ways. And I sometimes, when I go back, I wonder, did I really do that? Did I really live here? Did I really grow up here?
You didn't have indoor plumbing, did you?
Well, that was a joke. Now, we'll get to this about my wife, my wonderful wife,
Of course.
who laughs at almost everything I do. But one of the things she never laughed about, and she said, I didn't laugh about it the first time I heard it, and I haven't laughed about it the next dozen times, is I would tell people who hadn't necessarily know where I'd lived prior to Joanne and I being married, that being from Lake City, I wasn't all that familiar with indoor plumbing until we got married. And most people think it's funny. And if they don't know where I'd lived, then, and bring up Lake City and everything, it seems reasonably plausible, I guess. I thought it would give her a notion of how much she'd brought me up in the world.
I mean, Dad, you
like
probably said it 100 times, though.
Well,
at least.
I've said it 100 times in total. I try to limit it when she's around because I know she's not too keen about it. Everybody always laughs, though.
I mean, but it is a small enough town in which you talk about plausibility of not having indoor plumbing. I mean, it was.
We did have indoor.
You did, but it was humble beginnings in a small town in which, the town was really centered around First Baptist Church. Would you say?
Well, it was certainly the biggest church in town, and one of the things I remember now too is, I could bring up any variety of things. In the years I was growing up, because I was born in 1951, certainly when I was in elementary school, and really probably even into junior high, there were still separate water fountains.
Wow.
For black folks and white folks, and separate entrances to buildings. We didn't have any integration in the schools until I was in the 9th grade, and then it was any kid in Columbia County. Lake City was in Columbia County. Any kid could go any school they wanted to. Of course, none of the white kids were going to a black school, but some of the black kids came to our high school. And I graduated from high school in '69. There wasn't complete integration in Columbia County schools until a couple of years after I graduated. And as I understand the story, one or more judges in Duval County, Jacksonville, told the Lake City or Columbia County School Board they were either going to integrate or they're going to put them in jail. That was a sufficient
How was that
incentive.
reflected in your home and in your church in that small town back then?
Well, I don't remember my folks ever saying all that much about it one way or the other. The sense I had from my folks, and again, I was, of course, you know all this, Shawn, but for our folks listening or watching, I was a late in life baby. So my mom was 43 and my dad was 47 when I was born. So they were born in 1903 and 1908.
Wow.
And so I think their attitude, I never, at least as I remember, I don't remember any real hostility towards black folks. It was just they were different. As far as the church goes, we didn't have any black folks in our church at that point in time.
I mean, I remember in preparing for our conversation, and was really wanted to talk about your faith and your love for me, and that relationship between that and the church. And when we were talking about the First Baptist Church and the upbringing, you said there was more talk about whites and blacks than there were about gays.
Oh yeah, I don't remember ever having a conversation about gays in our church, one way or the other.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, the hot button topic then was about whites and blacks, and then the hot button topic changed to gays when we start picking on black folks for a little while, or what?
I'm not really sure. Of course, I haven't attended the First Baptist Church in Lake City, Florida since I was 19 years old. Of course, you know all this, but my mom died when I was 19, and I didn't have a home in Lake City anymore. My dad had died 3.5 years before that, right before I turned 16. So I wasn't living in Lake City, and I wasn't going to the First Baptist Church.
So you were parentless at the age of 19.
Yeah. I saw the other day.
Wow.
This was a little bit dated, but 0.3% of the people, I guess in our country, had lost their parents by the time they were my age. So that put me in a very select group, son. Very select.
And we talk a lot about your mom and dad, particularly your mother, and have over these last 18 years. Tell me about your mom.
The more I think about what she did in some trying circumstances, just the more impressed I am. She was the type of person. I've got a picture here, and this kind of hits both topics. This picture would have been taken when I was a senior in high school. It was a church picture of my mom and me. And I wish I knew what time of the year it was taken, because I started my senior year in high school fall of '68 and then graduated in May or June of '69. I don't know that specifically. But she was the kind of person who went about living a life that wasn't always very easy without complaining and doing what was required or what needed to be done. And while she's not what I would call the most demonstrative person in the world, and again, my reflections are of trying to make sense of both of my parents, her particularly, I suppose, from the standpoint of being 19 when she died, and looking back on it now for someone, me, who will soon be 75 years old. And the more I try to understand her life, what she did, how she treated me, the encouragement she gave me, that's ongoing. And I love that phrase that you had about the ripples of love, and how her love and encouragement for me has continued to pay dividends now, all these years later. It's very gratifying.
If you want to know who my dad is, he's a fella who wants to know if he can bring a picture of his mom to today's conversation. I mean, that really speaks a lot about just who you are, just the character of who you are, and how much love you had for her, and how that ripple that you just spoke of is real. I mean, we're not making this up. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about my grandmother, Maddie Meeks.
Yeah. I mean, I love you. I just love hearing you say that.
Yeah. Well, it's real, and that's one of the things I love about our relationship is it's real. I mean, we're not blood related, but I can feel her, and I have my own picture. Since you wanted to bring yours, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but it says love on it, and it's got a picture of my dad and his mom, but then also a picture of me and my dad together. And it is the ripples of his love and the impact that she's had on your life, the impact that you have on my life, and now the impact that I'm able to have. Because, men like me, gay guys like me, we're shunned often, and we're pushed to the fringes, and we're not loved. I mean, my mother disowned me when I was 19. So you lost your mom at 19. I lost my mom at 19. And so I understand what it's like to lose a mother. And I was rejected by mine. And so the healing that you've provided me, and I've told you this 1,000 times, and continue to provide me, and being my dad, is immeasurable. And the wounds of all of that, the religious wounds that are there because you're a faith-filled man, and your unconditional love for me these 18 years when I have thrown some stuff your way and you say, I love you anyway, son.
Well, you have to just,
I love you anyway.
And so?
Yeah. So how does your faith today differ from the faith that was, or that they told you was?
Well, of course, I was a boy then in Lake City, and I think I got some of what I would consider the essentials of a Christian faith. But then as an adult, try to, in effect, marry those basic concepts with wanting to live a godly life. So at that time in my early 20s, well, I can't continue to live the kind of life I'm living if I'm going to say I believe certain things, and I've got to square up my belief system with my actions. Now, certainly over the years, almost all my adult life, I've been a member of a Presbyterian church, which I would say, I hate to, don't want to be insulting my Baptist friends, but maybe a little more challenging theologically than being in a Baptist church, perhaps. More independent thinking of a person supposed to think for themselves, not just follow a party line, I would say. And then my wife and I, my wonderful wife Joanne, and I've been married for this year will be 25 years. I've gone to the Episcopal Church with her. In fact, I'm going to join the Episcopal Church this year because I really just wanted us to be in the same church. So I've had a lot more time to think about how to live a godly life and what that meant and how to pursue that as an adult than I did as basically a teenager. A lot of living in between being 18 or 19 years old and soon to be 75, son.
Yes. Well, one of the reasons I love and respect you, Dad, is because you don't put a whole lot of, you say you've put a lot of thought into it. Maybe you did in that time period between 19 and 75, but you actually do walk the walk, or you walk the talk, and you just inspire me so much in that regard from a spiritual perspective. Like, really, how can I line myself up as a gay man? When I'm when I have been pushed to the fringes, I look to alcohol, I look to the bars, I look to ways to change the way that I felt because being rejected was so hurtful. Well, that's so hard.
That's something that, there's a lot that I've learned over these 18 years of us being in this relationship. And of course, you've heard this so many times. You're the only person, so I don't have any biological children, you're the only person in the world who's ever called me Dad. I never tire of your calling me Dad. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal to me every day that you do that. So the rejection aspect of it, and there have been times I felt rejected, but the level that you've experienced that and the effects, I'm much more, I suppose, aware of that now because of our discussions and conversations about it over all these years, and it is a very harmful, corrosive has a very harmful, corrosive effect on people to be rejected. And all the different ways that you've been rejected is amazingly hurtful.
And has been and affected me. The scars I carry today, and when I met you, they were wounds. They weren't scars, and they're scars today. I thought maybe that they would go away as you continue to love me, and I realize I have to walk with these scars. The wounds are gone. Many of them are gone. But it's interesting how the human spirit of you, the spirit of things, your faith, your Christian faith, my faith in something better than the way I was living before, my hope that perhaps one day I would meet someone that I could admire and respect sincerely. I'm talking about from the core of my being, not making it up, like on Father's Day going to find a card that says something that I actually meant, like the way you changed my life, the way you impacted me, and do that in such a sincere, authentic fashion, because authenticity is a core value of mine. So, but the way in which I wasn't hunting for a dad, and you weren't hunting for a son.
Well, no.
Right? You were married before meeting your beautiful wife, Joanne.
Yes.
And you didn't have any children.
That's correct.
And then that marriage ended. And then tell me more about that.
Well,
by that, I just mean from a familial standpoint, like you didn't have any children and all.
Well, I think that certainly one of the effects of that is I've had more capacity, more emotional capacity to have other relationships. I mean, if I'd had biological children, I wouldn't have had the same emotional capacity. So the thing we've talked about when life closes a door, sometimes God can open a window. And I feel that about Joanne. I guess the second or third time I went to the divorce attorney, she said, well, you know what you need to do? And I said, well, I suppose that's why I'm here. She said, well, you need to get a date. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but it's been about 25 years. I've thought about it. And I had no desire to be single. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go out with someone who I knew I wouldn't be interested in marrying. Why drive? Tallahassee's 2.5 hours from Jacksonville. Why drive an hour and turn around and come back if I'm not going to Tallahassee? So I thought, I'd known Joanne, as it turned out, 7 years, strictly in a business setting. And I thought, well, I think I'll take a chance on Joanne.
Yeah, and I think even before Joanne, if I could, because one of the things I really admire about you, Dad, is that you really leaned into your faith. You really were in the dark night of the soul. You didn't want the divorce. The divorce, it was wanted. I mean, she wanted a divorce. That was the end. I mean, it was time. And it was hard.
Yes.
So let's just say that. And I remember you saying to me around leaning into your faith.
Well, I remember I made a real contrast because then I was 47, and I remembered when my mom died and I was 19. I was angry, and this why me sort of stuff. And the last 2 years I was in college, I was roommate with these 3 guys I'd grown up with from Lake City. And on weekends, oftentimes, they would go back home to Lake City to their family, mom and dad. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have a mom and dad. I got my sister. I got a sister who's 12 and a half years older. She has a home, but she's married with 3 kids. And, that's not I can go there, but that's not really my home. But I made the decision when the circumstances came about as they did when I was now 47. I thought, well, I'm not going to go down that path I did at 19. There was no good result from being angry and going that way. So, and I decided the time I want to be in the Presbyterian Church, I thought, well, I don't want to ask a bunch of questions about where my wife is. I'm going to go to Fernandina, which is about 30 miles north of Jacksonville, which was easily enough done. I go there and nobody knows me and I don't know anybody.
And you don't have to explain anything.
I don't have to explain anything.
And you can lean into your faith and not be angry.
Well, and the folks there were so good to me, and eventually I told the pastor of the church my circumstances, and I was loved and accepted and encouraged and going down the road.
Imagine that, loved and accepted and encouraged by a church. That's foreign to me, Dad. It's foreign to me, and that's why your love is so important to me. because you love me and you're part of a church. And so there's this in-between piece that's, those are the wounds that you have helped heal and witnessing you in your life as you leaned into that church, but you still loved me, At that point, had you met Joanne, or were you dating Joanne at that time, or you were
not
leaning
initially.
into the church?
So, because soon thereafter, I think it was September of '98, I found this condominium on Amelia Island, and it was a guy owned a furniture store, and it was all decked out, nice furniture, linens, everything down to the pots and pans. So it was easy for me to move there and move in. And I think probably the first Sunday I was there, I went to the First Presbyterian Church of Fernandina Beach.
Yeah, I love it because you're leaning into love, leaning into God, leaning into not being angry, resulted in meeting Joanne and meeting love and having love show up. And she showed up in need of love too. And it's just, the way that the love moves is just so beautiful. Like I said, you weren't looking for a son. Joanne was married previously and had 2 children that were almost teenagers when you entered the picture. They never called you dad.
Oh, no.
And so, you were tending the house and with her and all of that, but they didn't call you dad. And then one day, you're now married to Joanne. You bought a big old house in a transitioning neighborhood that Jeff and I decided to open a restaurant in, and called 3 Layers. And you came in for dinner and sat down, and I walked up to that table, and you always say I tell the story best.
You do. Was it really the first time you saw me? I haven't heard that before.
That was the first. I really did, yeah. Yeah, it was the first time I saw you. You walked into our restaurant.
I thought maybe I'd shown a little bit of...
No, sat down. And there was something about it, something about you, when I walked over to the table, and again, I wasn't in search of a dad. I really wasn't. But in having a conversation with you that night at the table with Joanne, there was something special about you. And again, it kind of goes back to you leaning into not being angry and leaning into love, which was the church, and then love leaning into you, which was Joanne, and then you two leaning into love with supporting our local restaurant, and then love found me with you that day. And I can't, the work that I do here at the farm and the work that I do in my life, this purpose work, I call it magic because I don't understand how it works and I don't understand why it works. And I love that about what I do because my mind is so overactive, and I could have just picked you, that day. But it was something that was magic, and I don't understand what that was. And then you came in a second time, and I felt it again. And then I know you walked every morning, so I asked if I could walk with you, and sure. So we started walking together. And then the more I got to know you, all that the wounds that I carried were so deep. I just knew if I just said one thing, you would not talk to me again.
Now, when did you talk to Joanne to ask her what she thought?
It was probably a few months in.
So we'd walked.
We had walked for a while, and I just had the sense that you were my dad. And I was so heterophobic. You hear homophobia, but I was heterophobic. I had been disowned and discouraged and by friends and family and not wanted and all of that so many times that I was so afraid I would never, ever tell a straight man that, and I'm in my mid to late 30s, that I think you're my dad, And so I went to Joanne, your beautiful wife, pulled her aside. I actually went over to their office.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew you talked to her. I've forgotten where.
And I said, can I have a moment with you? And sat down with her, and tears are streaming down my face. And she said, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I said, well, something I have to tell you, and I don't know what to do with this feeling. I'm not sure what this is about, except to say, I feel like Jack is my dad. And then she got teared up, and she said, well, I don't think she knew what to do with this grown-ass man. But, except to say, I think you should tell him. She immediately said, I think you should tell him.
Yeah.
And, really? You do? Yeah, I think you should tell him. And so I did. I did tell you. And so as a man of faith, what was that like for a gay guy to come to you and say, hey, by the way, I think you're my dad?
Well, I didn't really compute the gay all that much one way or the other, I don't think. The part I remember the most is in that context, you're telling me that I'd done more for you than your biological dad had. And I remember saying, well, Shawn, I haven't done much of anything. And then over a period of time, you told me more about your upbringing and how to say it was dysfunctional and hurtful would be a compliment based on, as we talked over the years, more about all that. So that was more about what I initially remember thinking, well, I don't think I've really done all that much. I didn't.
You didn't know all that healing was happening every time we walked. Further healing was happening.
No, I certainly didn't.
Yeah, and even in prepping for our time, we were walking here at the farm today, and I was saying, I need you to know that me being a gay guy is a big deal. Like that piece, because in asking you the question, you saying, well, I don't really care that you were gay, and it's just it was so foreign to me back then. It's such a big deal. It's such a big deal and continues to be a big deal. There's just seemingly this looming shame that hangs over me about being who I am because of everything that's happened. And I'm sure the listeners can understand what I'm talking about. The way in which, particularly if your gender expression is a little more effeminate than mine, the way you're treated in the world, this hurtfulness that we just carry around with us. So it's a really, really big deal for you, and on top of that, to be a man of faith. I thought you would judge me. I remember the first time I took my shirt off. I'm covered in tattoos. I thought he would judge me. He never even said anything about it. I remember I got my ears pierced. I thought you'd say something after I got the restaurant. I thought you'd say something.
Maybe I'm not all that observant. I don't.
Yeah. Well, our relationship, as I said, is so important to me. What is it meant to you?
Well, some of that I've already mentioned or alluded to. It's such a big deal to have someone who calls me dad. I mean, I never set out not to have children of my own, and I didn't anticipate what we would develop over 18 years. So there are things I talk about with you that probably Joanne would be the only other person I would talk to about. I mean, we've talked about all sorts of things, various transitions that I've gone through, a lot career-wise, as I'm aging out of my career aspects, and things in the neighborhood, because you live there for a while, and that can be such a challenge. And so we talk, if not every day, we probably hardly ever go more than 2 or 3 days without talking.
Right.
And that's because we're gone or something's going on. So,
and also I want to say, and also often praying together.
Yeah, that too.
And that is huge for me. I mean, I used to get a sick feeling in my belly, but the ability, for you to give the blessing on the food and that sort of thing, having a relationship with you has really allowed me to step into this being more honorable in my own life, witnessing you. You don't tell me to be honorable, just witnessing you in your life. The McGuire, as we've described, Shawn McGuire is filled with wounds and scars. And, for a long time, we talk to each other every morning, and you say, Shawn Meeks McGuire, Shawn Meeks McGuire. Well, there's Shawn Meeks McGuire. And when I bought this land in this place, I just had this sense that I really wanted to evolve past the wounds, past the scars, and really step more into the spirit of my dad, you. And it's a big deal for you to be my dad. And it's a big hurdle for me to jump over to want to say, golly, whatever, just you're like Andy Griffith, you really are. I mean, and I've been a little more crass than that, and to genuinely not change with my mind the way that I am as a man, but authentically and genuinely shifting the spirit of me to a gentler place.
Well, I think too, because these are pretty serious things we're talking about, just the amount of laughter we've shared over the years. And we develop our own stories, things that we laugh about, things I can say to you that I may not can say to anyone else, that you know the orientation, you know where I'm coming from. I mean, we don't get that sort of relationship with another person without the investment of time and energy and thoughtfulness and
grace,
all of that, all that together.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you got to. I can't go through all the crazy situations we've ended up in, but we had a conversation all these years ago, and I was aggravated about the person in the conversation in the meeting who was representing this guy who I thought was really reprehensible about some property they were not taking care of that was across the street from this property my wife and I owned. And I remember putting my shaking.
Well, you have to understand, everyone. This is Andy Griffith. So I'm like in this meeting with him, and and then all of a sudden he's never raised his voice ever, and now he's raising his voice and shaking his finger at this guy in his face. Of course, the guy deserved it. I mean, he was driving around in a $100,000 car with the windows rolled up, smoking cigarettes. Asking you for a handout. So that's essentially what was happening. And you just shook your finger at him. And I said, Dad, do you realize you shook your finger at that fella? The essence of you, and I appreciate you wanting to bring laughter to this conversation. I mean, there is some levity here, and we have done a lot of laughing, and yet I just am so grateful for how you've helped me grow as a man. And last year I did something very special for you at Christmas time. I haven't told the listeners, but we most recently, unfortunately, had found out that the grandchildren of Jeff's, our grandkids, are being taught that we're not of God. And every Christmas for the last decade we have spent in Tennessee with the grandkids. And the last couple times we went up, we were getting all these questions around boys can't be married, and you guys aren't of God. I'm talking about from 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and then the parents never challenged them and then found out that they were going to an evangelical church. And the wound there was so deep for me. It just put me back in my trauma.
Well, just opened all that up again for you.
It really did.
Yeah.
And so it was Christmas time, and that's where we normally go. And so instead, you came to the house for Christmas, and I just had this in my spirit that I just really wanted to take ownership of the man that I'm trying to become, the Meeks, let go of the wound that is McGuire. And I said to Jeff, I think I'm going to change my name. He said, what?
Yeah.
I said, I think I'm going to change my name. He goes, to what? And I said, to Shawn Meeks. And he said, Shawn Meeks McGuire, right? And I said, no, I was thinking Shawn McGuire Meeks, because that's the way in which it went. Shawn, the hurt is McGuire.
Chronology, yeah.
And the love is Meeks. And so at Christmas time last year, I invited you, in spite of the wound that we were missing out on with these grandkids who were now being taught that we were not of God. A man of God and his beautiful wife, Joanne, were coming to our farm to celebrate the birth of Christ, in which we went to church Christmas Eve. And I wept at the altar, genuinely knowing that the birth of Christ, the Christ in me, was being born in the Meeks, in the love, the ripple of love that was Maddie Meeks, through you, Dad. You didn't know that you were going to have a son, Meeks, the next morning.
Well, no,
on Christmas morning.
You handed me this sheaf of papers. I started
Well, it was actually in a package.
Yeah.
And then he starts flipping through it, and tears start flowing. So on that day, a child was born. A son was given, and you're my dad, and now I'm Shawn McGuire Meeks. That's where that comes from. And all the lessons that you have taught me over the 18 years, and all the lessons I've taught you in our relationship about what it's like to be wounded and suffer the trauma of being gay, lesbian, well, not lesbian, but
You hadn't told me
being
that.
a letter, being LGBT, being us in society, in the church, and in the faith. And that relationship and the beautiful relationship that we have has really, opened you up to more love. And I mean, there's another beautiful story that I really would love to tell. I don't think we have time in this episode, but you actually have a trans grandson now.
Yeah.
And so, but will you stick around with me and
Oh,
we'll talk about how that unfolded and that ripple of love of your mom ripples through you, through me. And now, I mean, he's not my son, but we just had dinner the other night together, the three of us.
Yeah,
and
we
it was
did.
absolutely beautiful. So will you stick around with me and we'll tell that story?
Sure.
And that ripple of love. So I want to thank everyone for joining me for this episode of Conjuring the Human Spirit. And join us next week where we talk more ripples. That is Max. Hey y'all, it's Shawn coming to you from the ceremonial tent inside the newly renovated barn with all kinds of exciting things happening here. This dusty barn has been converted into a magical retreat place for you to unplug and connect. Our next workshop coming up is the magic of listening. We're going to do that 4 times a year now that we have a climate-controlled environment to offer you. And we'll do it on the solstice or the equinoxes, and that is... the next one is March 20th, 21st, and 22nd. You arrive on Friday in the afternoon. My husband cooks you an awesome meal, and then we dive in that evening, all day Saturday, half the day Sunday. And if you have the experience that most say they have here, you walk out of here changed, and you're invited. There's only 12 of you that come from across the country here to the farm, and it's an intimate setting. I think you would love it. If you're looking at how to grow, what do you want to spring forth in your life in this new season coming, then join us here at the farm, March 20th, 21st, 22nd. Check out all the details on the website, McGuireLife.com. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Reach out, send me a message. Let's talk about it. Sending you big hugs and love from me, Jeff, Rumi Plato, here at the farm.
You've been listening to Conjuring the Human Spirit with Shawn McGuire Meeks. To connect with Shawn, learn more about working one-on-one, or to grab your spot for an upcoming workshop, visit McGuireLife.com or tap the link in this episode's description. Thank you for joining us, and remember, you're not alone.